Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Kim, and I am your Student Success Coordinator. Today, we're going to be going over the basic composition final essay and just some tips and tricks to make sure that we end up with a passing score. So grab a piece of paper to take some notes and practice with me, and we'll go ahead and get started. The first part of the essay is the prompt, and the prompt is basically just the question that you're going to be answering in your essay. It is the whole point of your paper, what you're writing about. It is super, super important that we read the prompt in full and then reword it when creating your thesis for your essay. We're going to go into detail a little bit more about that later. So for now, just know that that is extremely important, and we'll get to that on the next couple slides. Here's an example. If the prompt was, why is it important to go to college? My thesis might be something like, it's important to go to college because blank, blank, and blank. And in those blanks, I would just list my 3 reasons, why I would say college education is important. Here's some examples of prompts. You can review those. But basically, you just want to think of it as the question that you're being asked to write about. The thesis is basically a statement you make when writing an essay that you would intend to prove or disprove. Again, it is the whole point of your paper. I want to stop here because the thesis is extremely important. And if I'm perfectly honest, the thesis is what determines whether or not your essay passes. And so we have to make sure we follow a good formula for writing a thesis. I provided that below. So you can go ahead and write this down. A good formula for writing a thesis statement is blank is or was blank because blank, blank, blank. So as we saw in the previous slide, it is important to go to college because, and then you give your 3 reasons. So here's an example. Andrew is a great teacher because he goes out of his way to help his students, makes learning fun with videos, and gets parents involved in the classroom. I'm going to share a quick video to help sync this in. So give me a second to cue that up.
There.
Fantastic. Let me see it.
No, wait, I changed my mind.
I'm sure what you've written is fine. Just let me see.
No, don't look. It's not ready.
It's so simple. Only 10 words. What I learned in boarding school is blankety, blankety, blank.
I can do this. I can do this.
What I learned in boarding school is... What I learned in boarding school is...
Okay, so that was probably a little bit of a funny way to illustrate it, but Mrs. Puff is right. Writing a thesis really is easy. It's just following that formula. Blank is or was blank because blank, blank, blank. More information on the thesis. When writing your thesis, it's important to consider the prompt and what is being asked of you. Again, the thesis is a brief answer to the prompt, which is then answered more in depth by the rest of your essay. So the thesis statement is usually the last sentence of the first paragraph. That kind of sums up your introductory paragraph and really kind of shows readers, hey, this is what we're looking forward to reading today. Here's an example. The prompt was, what was the most rewarding time in your life so far? The most rewarding time in my life, who or what, that first blank, was when I got to help students finish their high school diplomas and start college because it meant a lot to me to be able to change lives. So this one doesn't quite go into 3 reasons, but you still get the point. It uses that blank, is or was blank because, and then you give your 3 reasons. Here's a visual representation of that, kind of do's and don'ts of a thesis. You just want to make sure you provide readers with the main claim of your paper. It's going to tell your readers, again, what your paper will be about. It's a claim that others can agree or disagree with. So a lot of the time they'll ask you, a question, would you rather do this or this? You're going to argue one side or the other. It is always a statement, not a question. So you are arguing your point. It's also always written in your own words. You cannot use a quote from another source. It is your opinion, and you're stating your opinion and providing facts to support that opinion. And again, appears at the end of your introduction. So just keep that in mind. Here's some more thesis examples. I just took those prompts from the very beginning and put them in thesis form. So I would rather live in the city because blank, blank, blank. I think the most influential person in the 20th century was whoever, because, and then I'm going to give my three reasons. Three things I want to accomplish after college are, and then I'm going to give those three things. And then because blank, 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 athletes should or shouldn't be drug tested, and then provide my three reasons for my argument. And then three positive or negative things about living forever are blank. Okay, you can pause this video if you want to practice. The prompt that I gave you is, what is your favorite food and why? So if you'd like to pause this video to practice, you're definitely welcome to do so. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about proper structure of an essay, because while the thesis is extremely important, structure is important also. There are three main sections to your paper. So the first one is the introduction. That's where your thesis is. Then you have your body paragraphs. Each of those three reasons in your thesis is going to represent a body paragraph. And then finally, you have your conclusion at the very end, meant to wrap things up. Just a side note, references are super important. If you use any information that's not your own, if you use a quote or you use information that is not common knowledge, we just want to make sure we give credit where credit is due. Here's a visual representation of that structure. Again, you have your intro, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, and body paragraph 3, and then your conclusion. Remember, the topic sentence at the very beginning of each body paragraph just ties it back to the thesis. So if I were to write a paper about three types of dogs, my favorite three types of dogs, maybe I'd pick a Chihuahua, because that's what I have, a Black Lab, and a Pit Bull. Right? So each of my body paragraphs would be about each of those types of dogs. So the first one would be about Chihuahuas, second one would be about Black Labs, and then the third one would be about Pit Bulls. But at the very beginning of each of those body paragraphs, I just want to introduce that subject. So I could say something as simple as, one of my favorite dogs is a Chihuahua. I have two Chihuahuas. Their names are Pancho and Ziggy. And then, I could go into detail there. The next one would be, another of my favorite dogs is a Black Lab. I grew up with Black Labs. They're super loyal, blah, 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 blah. And then third one would be, one of my other favorite dog breeds is a Pit Bull. Pit Bulls get a lot of hate, but they're really loving animals. I could go into detail forever. I could talk all day about dogs, but you get the point. And then finally, at the very bottom, again, your conclusion. Here's another visual representation of that. So again, your intro is right up top and kind of funnels down into your thesis statement. So the beginning of the intro paragraph is just preparing readers, kind of getting them adjusted to the scene, all that good stuff. Your body paragraphs are here in the middle, and then the other end of your paper is your conclusion. So, just to review, and then you kind of wrap things up very nicely. Again, another way of looking at it, another way of thinking of this is, your introduction is where you say what you're going to say. Your body paragraphs are where you actually say that. And then your conclusion is where you remind readers of what you've already said. So just to go in a little more detail, the intro is where you're going to tell your audience what your essay is about. You want to try and start your essay with some sort of attention grabber. So you could use a quote, you could use an anecdote, which is just a fancy word for story, or you could use a statistic or fact. So if I were writing a paper about dogs, I might find a quote from a book about dogs being man's best friend. Or I might talk about a story from my childhood where my dog saved me from the well, right? I mean, just an example. But then you're going to bring up the focus or main topic of your paper. That's where your thesis is. And at the very end, you want to explain your scope or the extent to which the problem exists, and often list the various examples or proof you plan to discuss in your paper. Hint, hint, that's the thesis, your three reasons. Here's an example. So this is a student essay. It says, "Wow," I exclaimed as I sat back and admired the beautiful child that was just placed into my arms. "I can't believe I just did that." That's an attention getter, right? You read that and you're like, okay, I mean, childbirth is cool, but what was so special about this for you? And that's where her thesis comes in. So it says, childbirth to me was the most rewarding experience of my life because I learned how to get over my fear of needles, find the right doctor group, and find techniques to help me enjoy the most amazing moment of my life. So again, you see that formula: blank is or was blank because blank, blank, blank. Drill that into your head and you will be just fine. On to body paragraphs. So each of the reasons you gave in your thesis will have an entire paragraph to itself in the body of your essay. So again, if I were to write an essay about dogs and I picked Chihuahuas, Black Labs, and Pit Bulls, I would have a paragraph on Chihuahuas, a paragraph on Black Labs, and a paragraph on Pit Bulls. So whatever you use in your thesis, that's what you're using in your body paragraphs. Each body paragraph needs to have a topic sentence, which is like a mini thesis and explains what that paragraph is about, with 2 or 3 sentences following it that contain actual evidence to back up your claim. So if the paper was about city versus country living, if I said I wanted to live in the city and I gave my 3 reasons, I just want to make sure at the beginning of each body paragraph that I introduce that reason to the reader and just say, okay, now we're going to talk about this, basically, in a more formal way. Finally, your conclusion. So you're restating your introduction, but wording it slightly differently. Basically, you want to make sure you restate your thesis and explain what you told the audience already one last time. So here's an example from that same essay about childbirth. Childbirth to me was the most rewarding experience of my life because, as you can see, I learned how to get over my fear of needles, find the right doctor group, and find techniques to help me enjoy the most amazing moment of my life. So obviously that's her same thesis that she wrote. She just added, as you can see. Um, for formal writing, we want to try to stay away from personal pronouns like you or I or we. But, in this essay, it was fine because it was talking about a personal experience. Just a word about references and citations. You just want to make sure if you have to use information from elsewhere, you just give credit where credit's due. Here's some websites that help with that. Grammar and spelling help. Grammarly, if you don't have it, install it. It's a Google extension. It is super, super helpful. It's basically like Microsoft Word spell check, but live on the internet. Maybe not for this essay, but moving forward, as you're writing your essays, it's important to review them before you turn them in. I mean, you want to do that for this essay too, but some of these techniques you may not be able to do because of the type of essay. But to do so, you can read your essay out loud to yourself, friends, or family, so you can catch mistakes. You can ask your classmates to review. That's called the peer review. Or you can ask NEO tutoring services to review it for you. So here's their contact info. You can pause this video and write that down if you'd like. So let's recap really quick. Essay should be in 5-paragraph format. Again, your intro, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. That's it. No more, no less. A good thesis makes a good essay. Again, that is really that will determine if you pass or don't pass the class. So make sure you follow that formula. Blank is or was blank because blank, blank, blank. Cite your sources if you use research from somewhere else. And finally, review before you submit. If you do have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And I wish you lots of luck on your essay. I hope everything goes well.